We all remember the story. It was the central tragedy, the seemingly insurmountable obstacle in the epic romance of Jenny and Sumit. For years, we watched Sumit Singh, a man torn between the woman he loved and the family he couldn't leave, describe the crushing weight of his divorce, a financial anchor tied to his ankle, dragging him down. The alimony, he told us, was massive, a debt so significant it would take him years, a decade even, to repay. It was the reason they couldn't marry, the reason their dream was constantly deferred. We saw Jenny's anguish as she realized her own life savings, the nest egg for her golden years, would have to be sacrificed on the altar of his past. It was the financial burden that delayed their marriage for years, a debt paid with Jenny's life savings. But what if the story we were told was only a sliver of the truth? What if the victim of the divorce was also the secret beneficiary? If you believe there's more to the story than what we see on television, and you want to dive deep into the theories that producers don't want you to know, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're about to peel back the layers on one of the biggest financial mysteries in the history of the show. And you won't want to miss a single discovery. Now, let's get into it. To understand the sheer brilliance of the scheme we are about to outline, we have to go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of Jenny and Sumit, but the beginning of Sumit's first marriage. It was an arranged marriage, a union not of two people, but of two families. In India, as in many cultures, such a marriage is a contract, a public declaration of status and a merging of reputations. The divorce, therefore, was not just the separation of two people who were incompatible. It was a public failure, a source of potential shame and dishonor for both families involved. For the Singh family, it was a catastrophe. Their son, their only son, had not only failed in his arranged marriage, but had done so because of an ongoing affair with an American woman twice his age. The scandal was immense. The optics were terrible. Anil and Sahna Singh, Sumit's parents, were facing a social nightmare. They needed a way out, a way to control the narrative. The official story is that the divorce was a long, arduous, and expensive process. Sumit's ex-wife and her family were, understandably, furious. They held all the cards. They could have dragged Sumit and the Singh family through a public and humiliating legal battle, exposing the full extent of his long-term affair with Jenny. The price for their silence, the price for a quick and quiet dissolution, was 20,000 American dollars, a staggering sum for a young man from a middle-class Indian family with a job at a call center. It was presented as a punitive measure, a financial punishment for the pain and shame he had caused. Sumit was to be financially ruined, a man starting from zero. This was the story sold to Jenny, and by extension, to the world. It was a simple, tragic, and believable narrative. Sumit, the repentant son, paying for his mistakes. Jenny, the devoted partner, makes the ultimate sacrifice to secure their future together. She liquidated her savings, handed over her financial security, believing she was buying her partner's freedom. But what if that narrative was a carefully constructed piece of theater? What if the goal was not to punish Sumit, but to control him? Not to ruin him financially, but to create the illusion of his ruin? Our exclusive theory, pieced together from analyzing the family's behavior and consulting with financial analysts on how such a backroom deal could operate, suggests a far more complex and cynical game was being played. The central thesis is this: the alimony payment was not a punishment, it was a transaction. A money laundering scheme designed to achieve three critical objectives for the Singh family. First, to secure a quick, no-fuss divorce and avoid a public scandal. Second, to create a situation where Sumit was financially dependent on and therefore controllable by his parents. And third, and this is the most shocking part, to do it all using Jenny's own money, effectively making her pay the very people who despised her for the privilege of being with their son. Let's break down the theoretical money trail, the path the cash would have taken in this alleged shadow agreement. This is a journey with three distinct steps. Step 1 is the only part of the story that is public knowledge. Jenny Slatten, having sold her assets in America, wires her life savings to Sumit Singh. This is the seed money, the capital that sets the entire machine in motion. From Jenny's perspective, this is an act of pure love. She is giving everything she has to free the man she loves from a legal and financial prison. She believes this money is going to his ex-wife's family, a final, painful payment to close a chapter of his life. She has no reason to suspect otherwise. She is an outsider, a woman isolated in a foreign country, completely dependent on Sumit for information. Her trust is absolute. Step 2 is also part of the public narrative, but it's where the story begins to diverge. Sumit takes the money from Jenny and transfers it to his ex-wife's family. The divorce is finalized. On paper, the debt is paid. The ex-wife and her family disappear from the story, having received their compensation. This is where the curtain is supposed to fall. Sumit is now free, but broke. He and Jenny can finally be together, but they must start from nothing. This is the image of the struggling couple, united against the world, that was presented to us. It's a powerful romantic image, but it's likely a facade. This brings us to step 3, the bombshell. The part of the transaction that was never meant to see the light of day. According to our theoretical model, this is the masterstroke of the entire plan. Within a short period after the alimony was paid, perhaps a week, maybe 2, just long enough to not raise immediate suspicion, a significant portion of that money allegedly began a secret journey back home. The theory suggests that a transfer was made, not from the ex-wife herself, but from her father, the patriarch of their family, directly to an account controlled by Sumit's father, Anil Singh. We're not talking about a small finder's fee. We're theorizing that almost 70% of the initial $20,000, somewhere in the range of $13,000 to $14,000, was funneled back to the Singh family. Why would the ex-wife's family agree to this? Why would they publicly demand a large settlement, only to secretly return the majority of it? The answer lies in the concept of a mutually beneficial arrangement, a backroom deal born of pragmatism. For the ex-wife's family, a prolonged, messy public divorce was just as damaging as it was for the Singhs. It would involve lawyers, court appearances, and the airing of dirty laundry for all the world to see. It would be a drain on their time, their finances, and their social standing. A secret deal offers a clean, profitable exit. They get to publicly win. They receive a substantial alimony payment, saving face and demonstrating that they were the wronged party who received justice. They also, in this theoretical scenario, get to keep a portion of the money, perhaps $5,000 or $6,000, as a sort of inconvenience fee for their troubles and their silence. They get a handsome profit for a week's work and avoid a legal nightmare. It's a golden parachute. All they have to do is play their part, act wronged, accept the money, and then quietly complete the final hidden transaction. Now, let's look at it from the perspective of Anil and Sahna Singh. This plan, if true, is nothing short of Machiavellian genius. They solve all of their problems in one fell swoop and emerge in a position of ultimate power. First, the divorce is handled. The scandal is contained. Their son is free from his first marriage with minimal public fuss. Second, and most critically, they've manufactured a crisis. Their son, Sumit, is now penniless. He has no savings, no resources. Who does he have to turn to? Them. He is now completely, utterly financially dependent on his parents, the very parents who disapprove of his relationship with Jenny. This gives them immense leverage. They can control his life, his decisions, and his relationship because they now hold the purse strings. They can dole out money as they see fit, creating a dynamic where Sumit must constantly seek their approval. The man who tried to break free is now more entangled than ever. And the third, most brutal element of this alleged scheme is the source of the funds. They didn't have to spend a single rupee of their own money to achieve this. The entire operation was funded by Jenny. The woman they viewed as a homewrecker, the woman who brought shame upon their family, was unwittingly the primary investor in her own subjugation. She thought she was paying for Sumit's freedom. In reality, she was paying a fee directly to his parents. She was financing the very mechanism of control that they would then use against her and Sumit for years to come. Her life savings didn't just disappear into the ether to pay off an old debt. A huge chunk of it, in this theoretical model, was sitting in Anil Singh's bank account, funding their lifestyle, perhaps even being used to support Sumit, all while they maintained the charade of their son's financial ruin. It is the ultimate irony. They didn't just take her money, they made her pay them for the privilege of disapproving of her. Let's re-examine Sumit's behavior on the show through this new, chilling lens. Think of all the times Sumit appeared anguished, stressed, and broken over his financial situation. Was it all an act? Or was he a pawn in his parents' game? It's possible he was not a willing co-conspirator, but a victim himself. Perhaps his parents presented this deal to him as the only way out. Son, we have arranged this. It is the only way to get the divorce quickly. Just do as we say. In this version of events, Sumit is still trapped, forced to lie to Jenny about the true nature of the transaction, creating a foundation of deceit in their relationship right from the start. He would have to live with the guilt of knowing Jenny's sacrifice was not what it seemed, that her money was now in his parents' hands. This would explain his constant state of anxiety, his deference to his parents. He wasn't just emotionally beholden to them, he was financially implicated in their scheme. Every argument about money, every discussion about their future would be tainted by this colossal secret. But there is a darker possibility. The possibility that Sumit was a willing participant, an active player in the deception. What if he and his parents planned this together? What if he saw it as the perfect solution? He gets his divorce, he gets to keep Jenny and her financial support, and he appeases his parents by giving them both control and a significant financial windfall. In this scenario, Sumit is not a tragic romantic hero. He is a master manipulator. His tears on camera were not tears of frustration, but tears of a performer, meant to sell the story, to ensure Jenny's sympathy, and more importantly, her financial compliance. He played the part of the destitute lover to perfection because the success of the entire scheme depended on Jenny believing it. He needed her to see him as a victim, so she would never question where the money really went. He needed her to feel like his savior, so she would willingly hand over her life savings without asking too many questions. This theory retroactively reframes every interaction we've ever seen between them. Remember the constant pressure from his parents, their refusals, their emotional blackmail, their threats of disownment. We watched it as a straightforward family drama, but if they were secretly holding a significant portion of Jenny's money, their actions take on a new, more sinister meaning. Their power wasn't just parental, it was financial. They weren't just withholding their blessing, they were the silent bankers of the relationship, controlling the flow of capital that originated from Jenny herself. When they provided a home for Jenny and Sumit, was it an act of reluctant acceptance, or a calculated move to keep their investment under their own roof, where they could monitor it? When they lectured Sumit about his responsibilities, were they speaking as concerned parents or as the de facto managers of his life, a life that Jenny had paid for? The scheme is also brilliant in its simplicity and its deniability. How could Jenny ever prove it? She's in a foreign country, with a limited understanding of the language and the intricacies of the financial system. The transactions would be between two Indian families, likely conducted in a way that would be difficult to trace for an outsider. There would be no paper trail leading back to her. Her name would be on the initial transfer to Sumit, but after that, she officially has no connection to the money. It becomes his money to do with as he pleases. The subsequent transfers from Sumit to his ex-in-laws, and from them to his own father, are 2 steps removed from her. She would have no legal standing to even request those bank records. She would have to rely entirely on the honesty of the man she loves, the very man who would be at the center of the deception. It's a perfectly insulated financial loop. Think about the psychological toll on Jenny. She spent years living in a state of limbo, her marriage prospects held hostage by this supposed debt. She gave up her home, her country, her financial independence, all for a story. The story was that her sacrifice was the key to unlocking their future. But if this theory holds true, her sacrifice was the key to locking them into a cage built and funded by her, but controlled by Anil and Sahna. She wasn't just lied to, she was used. Her love and trust were weaponized against her. She was made the unwitting architect of her own difficult circumstances. The people who were presented as the source of her problems, her cruel and unaccepting in-laws, were in this scenario secretly on her payroll. It's a level of betrayal that is almost too painful to contemplate. Let's dig deeper into the cultural mechanics that would make such a deal not only possible, but plausible. In many traditional family structures, major financial and legal decisions are not made by the individual, but by the head of the family, the patriarch. It's highly likely that the negotiations for the divorce were not between Sumit and his ex-wife, but between Anil Singh and his ex-wife's father. These 2 men would have been the architects of the agreement. They would have understood the stakes, family honor, social standing, and financial pragmatism. A deal that enriches one family, gives the other a clean exit with a profit, and contains a potentially explosive scandal. It is, from a purely strategic standpoint, an elegant solution. It bypasses the messy emotions of the children involved and resolves the issue at a higher, more practical level. The younger generation, Sumit and his ex-wife, would simply be told the terms of the deal their fathers had struck. Their role was to execute it. This also explains the seeming lack of long-term animosity from the ex-wife's family. Once the divorce was settled, they simply vanished. There were no lingering public feuds, no attempts to further expose Sumit. Why? Because according to this theory, they had no reason to be angry. They walked away with a clean break and a substantial tax-free cash payment for their silence and cooperation. They were not victims seeking revenge. They were business partners who had concluded a successful transaction. Their part in the drama was over, and they had been well compensated for their performance. Now, consider the timeline of events that followed the divorce. Sumit and Jenny were still not free. The financial excuse was gone, so a new set of obstacles had to be erected. This is when his parents' objections became even more theatrical and pronounced. The astrologer, the social ostracism, the threats of suicide. Every possible roadblock was thrown in their path. If they had already secured the money and established financial control, why continue the opposition so fiercely? Because financial control was only part of the goal. The ultimate goal was to break them up. The money was a tool, a means to an end. By keeping Sumit financially tethered, they could continue to exert pressure, hoping that eventually Jenny would give up and go home. They could make life so unbearable, so filled with constant stress and conflict, that the relationship would buckle under the strain. Every rupee they gave Sumit to live on would have been a reminder of his dependence. Every meal he ate, every bill he paid, would be indirectly funded by the money they had allegedly siphoned from Jenny. This creates a deeply toxic psychological dynamic. Sumit, living off the recycled funds of his girlfriend, would be in a constant state of emasculation and obligation to his parents. He could never truly stand on his own 2 feet and be the partner Jenny deserved, because his very foundation was built on a life funded by her. And Jenny, believing they were poor and struggling, would be less likely to demand things, more likely to accept their humble circumstances, never realizing that her own money was creating the illusion of poverty that kept them both trapped. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of control. This theory also sheds light on the sheer intensity of Sahna's emotional outbursts. We saw her weeping, threatening, and declaring that she would never accept Jenny. On the surface, it's the reaction of a mother who believes her son is ruining his life. But in the context of this financial conspiracy, it's also the reaction of someone who feels cheated. In her mind, she had orchestrated this brilliant plan to get her son back under her control, and yet he still chose Jenny. She had taken Jenny's money, but she couldn't take Sumit's heart. The constant emotional warfare was not just about disapproval, it was a desperate, ongoing attempt to make her investment pay off, to get the result she had paid for with Jenny's cash, a compliant, single son, back in the family fold. Jenny's resilience, her refusal to leave, was a direct challenge to Sahna's authority and a sign that her master plan, while financially successful, was an emotional failure. The most damning piece of circumstantial evidence is the simple question of numbers. $20,000 is a life-changing amount of money in India. For a family to simply hand that over, with no recourse, to a family they felt had been wronged, seems disproportionate to the circumstances, especially when a legal battle could have resulted in a much smaller, court-ordered settlement. The figure always felt more like a number plucked from thin air, a number that sounded sufficiently large and ruinous to an American audience and, more specifically, to Jenny. It was a number designed to empty her bank account. It wasn't based on legal precedent, it was based on the size of Jenny's nest egg. The alimony figure, in this theory, wasn't calculated to compensate the ex-wife. It was calculated to acquire Jenny's total available assets. This was not a simple divorce settlement. It was a hostile takeover of Jenny's financial life, executed by the two people who wanted her out of the picture more than anyone. They saw her not as a person, but as a resource to be exploited. Her love for their son was a vulnerability, and her life savings were the prize. They constructed a narrative of victimhood and financial ruin for Sumit, which served the dual purpose of eliciting sympathy and money from Jenny, while simultaneously providing the perfect cover for their secret enrichment. It was a plan that preyed on love, trust, and cultural ignorance. And for years, it seems to have worked perfectly. Jenny was left emotionally and financially depleted, living in a constant state of uncertainty, while the architects of her misery held all the cards and all the cash. The alimony wasn't a lie in the sense that it was never paid. The money did move. But the story surrounding it, the purpose, the final destination, that, we allege, was the greatest deception of all. It was a sham, a ghost payment designed to haunt their relationship for years, a financial ghost conjured up by his parents and paid for by the woman they would never accept. The money trail didn't end with the divorce, it was just the beginning of a new, more insidious form of control. Let us imagine for a moment the aftermath of such a perfect crime. Years pass, the dust settles. Jenny and Sumit are married, living a life of quiet domesticity, punctuated by the familiar tensions with his parents. The story of the $20,000 alimony payment has faded into a painful but distant memory, the founding myth of their struggle. It's the price they paid for love. It's a scar they both share. But the truth in the digital age is never truly buried. It doesn't decay, it lies dormant, a ghost in the machine, waiting for the right person to come looking. This is where our investigation takes a turn, moving from theoretical reconstruction to a hypothetical discovery. The reckoning, enter the catalyst, a concept we'll call the forensic accountant. This isn't a character in their lives, but an outside force, a narrative device representing the inevitable scrutiny that comes with being a public figure. Perhaps a fan of the show with a background in international finance becomes obsessed. Perhaps a journalist for an online outlet decides to dig deeper. For the sake of our narrative, let's call this entity the examiner. The examiner isn't interested in the drama. They're interested in the numbers. The numbers don't have emotions. The numbers don't lie. The examiner starts with the one known fact. Jenny Slatten, a U.S. citizen, transferred a large sum of money, approximately $20,000, to Sumit Singh, an Indian citizen, at a specific point in time. This is the starting point of the trail. An international wire transfer is not like handing someone a bag of cash. It leaves a permanent, indelible record. It has SWIFT codes, routing numbers, correspondent bank details, timestamps, and government reporting requirements designed to prevent money laundering. For a professional, this isn't a cold case. It's a puzzle with all the pieces on the table. The examiner would first verify the transfer from Jenny to Sumit. That part is simple. It matches the public story. The next step is to trace the outflow from Sumit's account. Again, a large transfer is made to an account belonging to the family of his ex-wife. On the surface, the story holds. The alimony was paid. But a good accountant doesn't stop at the surface. They look for patterns. They look for echoes. The key to unlocking this alleged conspiracy is not in the primary transactions, but in the secondary and tertiary movements of the money. The bombshell, the smoking gun, would be found by cross-referencing financial data. The examiner, using sophisticated data analysis tools, would look for any and all transactions connected to the primary players within a specific time frame, say, a 30-day window following the initial alimony payment. They would be looking for a circular flow of funds. And that is where they would find it. A transfer, for a seemingly unrelated reason, from an account controlled by Sumit's ex-father-in-law to an account controlled by Sumit's father, Anil Singh. The amount would be the first red flag. It wouldn't be a round number. It would be something specific like $13,750, an amount that represents a precise percentage of the original $20,000. The timing would be the second red flag. Not the next day, which would be too obvious, but perhaps 8 or 9 business days later. Enough time to create a thin layer of separation, but close enough to be statistically significant. The two transactions, the alimony payment and this mysterious kickback, would be linked by proximity and proportion. It's a classic money laundering pattern, layering, moving money through different accounts to obscure its original source and purpose. Now, imagine this evidence, this undeniable paper trail being presented, not in a courtroom, but in a living room. Imagine Jenny, confronted with documents, not accusations, not theories, but bank statements. Pages of them, with dates, names, and numbers highlighted. A flow chart showing her life savings making a round trip, with a significant portion landing in the bank account of the very man, Anil Singh, who sat in that same living room and told her she was not welcome in his family. The initial reaction would be disbelief, confusion. It must be a mistake, a forgery. But as the forensic accountant, the examiner explains the details, the matching transaction IDs from correspondent banks, the way international transfers are tracked, a cold, horrifying clarity would begin to set in. This is the moment of reckoning. It's the scene the show could never capture. Jenny Slatten, a woman who has endured so much, finally understands the true nature of the game she's been a part of. The years of financial struggle, the scrimping and saving, the constant anxiety about their future, it was all a performance. A lie. She didn't just pay for a divorce. She unknowingly paid a bribe to her own in-laws. She funded their lives, their comfort, their security, all under the guise of freeing their son. Every condescending lecture from Anil, every tearful rejection from Sahna, was delivered by people whose pockets she had indirectly lined. The betrayal is so profound, so multi-layered, it's almost impossible to process. It's a betrayal by Sumit, who lied to her. It's a betrayal by his parents, who manipulated her. It's a violation of the deepest trust a person can place in another. Now, picture the confrontation with Sumit. Jenny lays the documents on the table. There is no yelling, no screaming, just a quiet, chilling calm. The calm of a person whose heart has been shattered so completely that there are no more tears to cry. She wouldn't have to say much. Explain this, Sumit. That's all it would take. What would he do? This is the ultimate test of his character. Would he continue the lie? Would he claim it was a loan? A coincidence? A business deal between the two fathers that she couldn't possibly understand? He might try. He might attempt to gaslight her, to make her feel like she is the one who is crazy for believing these documents over him. But the evidence would be irrefutable. Eventually, under the weight of the proof, the dam would have to break. And we can only speculate on what would come pouring out. Perhaps a confession laced with shame and regret. A story of a weak man, trapped between his parents' demands and his love for her, who chose the path of least resistance. He might claim he was forced into it, that it was the only way his parents would agree to the divorce. He could frame himself as a victim too. They made me do it, Jenny. I had no choice. I was protecting you from the full truth because I knew it would destroy you. It's a plausible defense, the defense of a man who has made a career out of being caught in the middle. He would cry, he would beg for forgiveness. He would swear that he did it all for them, for their future. Or perhaps a different confession would emerge, a more cynical one, the confession of a man who was an active participant. Yes, Jenny, it's true. It was the only way. You don't understand my culture. You don't understand family. It was a deal made between my father and her father. It had nothing to do with you and me. It was a family business. This version is colder, more calculating. It frames the deception not as a moment of weakness, but as a necessary, pragmatic choice. In this scenario, he doesn't see the depth of the personal betrayal. He only sees a practical solution to a complex problem. He would be defensive, arguing that the outcome was what mattered. They got the divorce, they are together, so what difference does it make how the money was moved around? He wouldn't understand that he had treated her love not as a gift, but as a commodity. He had monetized her trust. He had liquidated her devotion and transferred it to his parents. Regardless of the nature of the confession, the relationship is fundamentally altered forever. The entire history of their time together must be reevaluated. Every memory is now tainted. Every past struggle is cast in a new, sinister light. Remember all the times Sumit lamented their lack of money? All the conversations about getting jobs, about building a future from scratch? All of it, a lie. There was always a safety net. There was always a hidden reserve of cash, Jenny's cash, being held by his parents. The power dynamic in the relationship shifts in an instant. Jenny is no longer the naive American, the older woman grateful for the love of a younger man. She is the wronged party. She is the one who holds all the cards. She knows the secret that could destroy the Singh family's reputation. How would this change her interactions with Anil and Sahna? The quiet subservience would be gone. The desperate need for their approval would vanish. Imagine her looking Anil in the eye, knowing that the comfortable chair he is sitting in, the food on his table, was all subsidized by her. The dynamic would be reversed. They would be the ones who are afraid. Afraid of her, afraid of exposure. They would know that she knows. Every polite conversation would be thick with unspoken tension. Her presence in their home would no longer be an intrusion they tolerate. It would be a constant, looming threat. She is the living embodiment of their dirty secret, and they would have no choice but to be nice to her, because she holds the power to detonate their lives. Let's re-examine key moments from the show through this new lens. Think about the time Sumit's parents moved in with them. It was presented as a trial period, a last-ditch effort by Sahna to teach Jenny how to be a good Indian wife. But with the knowledge of the secret financial arrangement, this move looks completely different. It wasn't about training Jenny, it was about surveillance. It was about moving into the house that Jenny's money was paying for, to keep a close eye on their son and the woman who held the key to their secret. They were protecting their investment. Sahna's obsessive cleaning and cooking wasn't just about cultural norms. It was about establishing dominance in a territory she felt she owned because her family was secretly holding the deed. And what about their wedding? The moment Sahna finally, tearfully, gives her blessing. We saw it as a mother's heart finally softening, but perhaps it was something else entirely. Perhaps it was the final, desperate act of a woman who has realized she has lost. She had tried everything. She had emotionally blackmailed her son. She had opposed him for a decade. And in our theoretical scenario, she had even taken his fiancé's money to control him, and none of it worked. He still chose Jenny. His spirit was not broken. The wedding, then, was not an act of acceptance, but an act of surrender. It was a strategic retreat. If you can't beat them, join them. By accepting the marriage, she could at least maintain a semblance of family unity and hope to keep the financial secret buried forever. Her tears were not tears of joy, they were tears of defeat. This theory also provides a chilling explanation for Sumit's seemingly endless prevarication and his inability to stand up to his parents. We chalked it up to cultural differences, to a deep-seated respect for his elders. But if he was party to this secret, his behavior was not driven by respect, but by guilt and complicity. He could never fully defy his parents because they were partners in his original lie to Jenny. They were bound together by this shared deception. To defy them would be to risk one of them letting the secret slip. He had to placate them, not just out of love or duty, but to ensure their continued silence. His entire life with Jenny was a tightrope walk, balancing her happiness against the risk of the truth ever coming out. This explains his constant anxiety, his nervous energy. He wasn't just managing a difficult family, he was the warden of a massive secret, a secret that could cost him everything. The sheer brilliance of the alleged scam is its psychological cruelty. It's a form of financial gaslighting. Jenny was made to feel that her financial sacrifice was a noble, necessary act of love that bonded her and Sumit together in their shared poverty. They were a team, starting from nothing, their love their only real asset. This is a powerful romantic narrative. But the truth in this theory is that her sacrifice did the opposite. It created a secret that would forever separate them. It put a mountain of deceit between them that he could never admit to, and it didn't bond them in poverty. It secretly enriched the very people who were the source of their conflict. It's a perfect loop of deception. Jenny's money is used to create the illusion of a problem, Sumit's poverty, which then makes Jenny feel more needed, more bonded, and less likely to question the circumstances. All the while, the architects of the problem are profiting from it. Is this the most brilliant scam in 90-day history? We have seen other deceptions. We have seen catfishing, secret families, and financial motives. But those are often straightforward cons. One person deceiving another for personal gain. This is different. This is a conspiracy, a multi-layered, multi-party deception involving two families, allegedly leveraging cultural norms and traditions as the perfect cover. It didn't just take the victim's money, it weaponized the victim's love. It used her emotions as the key to unlock her bank account, and then used the money from that bank account to build a cage for her and the man she loved. It is a scam of breathtaking cynicism. They didn't just steal from her, they made her thank them for it. They made her believe the robbery was a gift. What happens to a marriage when its foundational story is revealed to be a lie? Can it survive? Can Jenny ever look at Sumit the same way again? Can she ever trust a word he says? Every "I love you" would be haunted by the echo of his greatest deception. Every financial decision would be fraught with suspicion. And can she ever find peace living in the same country, the same city as the parents who orchestrated her betrayal? These are the questions that linger. The damage is not just financial, it's existential. It attacks the very fabric of her reality. The ultimate financial conspiracy. They didn't just take her money, they made her pay them for the privilege. It was a masterclass in manipulation, a long con hidden in plain sight, disguised as a family drama. Was Sumit a willing mastermind or a tragic pawn in his parents' cruel game? Was Jenny's love story a romance or a meticulously planned financial transaction from start to finish? The paper trail suggests a truth far darker than anything we ever saw on screen. Is this the most brilliant scam in 90-day history? Let us know what you think in the comments. And for those who want to see the evidence for themselves, we've put together a hypothetical flowchart of the money trail, showing every step of the journey from Jenny's American bank account to Anil Singh's pocket. That's available exclusively for our supporters. Join our Patreon to see the flowchart of the money.